The whispers started as a murmur. Then they became questions. Then those questions became accusations. And now, according to growing speculation surrounding the Invictus controversy, Prince Harry is allegedly facing something he never expected to hear, connected to the very project he once considered his greatest achievement calls to step back. Not from critics, not from royal commentators, but allegedly from voices within the wider Invictus community itself. And if that rumor is even partially true, then what we're witnessing may be the most painful chapter of Harry's post-royal life. Because Invictus was never supposed to be another controversy. It was supposed to be his redemption story. For years, no matter how many headlines exploded around him, no matter how many family feuds dominated the front pages, one thing remained untouchable. Invictus. Whenever Harry faced criticism, supporters pointed to Invictus. Whenever questions emerged about his decisions, people pointed to Invictus. Whenever his popularity dropped, Invictus remained the shield protecting him from the storm. But suddenly that shield appears to be cracking. And what makes this situation even more explosive is the timing. Just as Harry was being celebrated on prestigious lists and praised as a global leader in sport, another story began moving through media circles. A story involving a veteran, a story involving injuries, a story involving unanswered questions. And suddenly people weren't talking about awards anymore. They were talking about accountability. That's when the atmosphere allegedly began changing, because nothing damages a carefully crafted image faster than a contradiction. And according to critics, the contradiction couldn't be bigger. On one side stood Prince Harry accepting praise, recognition, and leadership accolades. On the other stood allegations surrounding a veteran connected to the Invictus movement who reportedly felt abandoned after suffering devastating injuries. Whether every claim proves accurate or not almost became secondary, because the perception itself was spreading fast, dangerously fast. And perception has always been the one thing Harry struggles to control. The more the controversy grew, the more uncomfortable questions started surfacing. Questions about responsibility, questions about oversight, questions about whether Invictus had become too focused on celebrity attention and not focused enough on the people it was originally created to serve. And that's where the real trouble began, because this wasn't simply another royal drama. This wasn't another family feud. This wasn't another battle with newspapers. This controversy was attached directly to Harry's proudest accomplishment. People began revisiting old conversations, old criticisms, old concerns. Some started asking whether Invictus had gradually transformed from a veterans first movement into a platform increasingly dominated by celebrity appearances, media deals, and publicity moments. Again, these were questions, but questions have power. And once they start spreading, they develop a life of their own, especially when nobody seems able to stop them. The deeper people looked, the more uncomfortable the optics appeared. Here was Harry receiving international praise. Here was Harry being called a leader. Here was Harry standing in front of cameras speaking about service, sacrifice, and support. Yet at the same time, reports were circulating about veterans allegedly struggling to get answers. That contrast became impossible for critics to ignore. And suddenly the story wasn't about Invictus victories anymore. It was about Invictus failures, real or perceived, fair or unfair. The narrative was changing, and Harry appeared powerless to stop it. Perhaps the most damaging part wasn't even the allegations themselves, it was the silence. Because silence creates a vacuum, and vacuums get filled with speculation. The longer questions remained unanswered, the louder the rumors became. The more people began wondering what was happening behind the scenes. Then came another wave of whispers suggesting senior figures connected to veteran communities were becoming frustrated. Whispers suggesting private concerns were being raised. Whispers suggesting Harry's role was being questioned more openly than ever before. None of it officially confirmed. Yet the whispers kept growing. And sometimes whispers can be more dangerous than headlines, because whispers imply there is something bigger waiting to emerge. Something still hidden. Something still buried. The atmosphere surrounding Invictus began feeling different. Heavier, more uncertain, less celebratory. And Harry suddenly found himself trapped inside a nightmare scenario. The very organization that elevated his reputation was now generating some of the toughest scrutiny of his life. For years, he had escaped criticism by pointing toward Invictus. Now critics were pointing directly at Invictus to criticize him. That reversal was brutal, and according to growing speculation, it allegedly triggered intense concern behind closed doors. The truly devastating part is that this controversy arrives at a moment when Harry can least afford another credibility crisis. For years, he has fought battles on multiple fronts. He fought fought the British press, he fought public opinion, he fought members of his own family, he fought institutions he once represented. Through all of that chaos, Invictus remained the one achievement nobody could easily take away from him. It was his success story, his proof that he could create something meaningful outside palace walls. But now, according to growing speculation, that success story is becoming the source of his biggest headache. And when people begin questioning the one thing that has consistently protected your reputation, panic has a way of setting in very quickly. What makes the situation even more uncomfortable is the emotional symbolism attached to Invictus. This isn't just another charity. This isn't another foundation. This organization was built around wounded veterans, sacrifice, resilience, and recovery. The public naturally expects a higher standard. They expect compassion. They expect accountability. They expect action. And when stories emerge suggesting someone may have slipped through the cracks, people don't react with ordinary disappointment. They react emotionally. They react personally. They react with anger. Suddenly, the criticism becomes more intense because veterans are involved. Suddenly, every unanswered question feels larger than life. As rumors continued spreading, another narrative allegedly began forming behind the scenes. Some commentators started suggesting that Harry himself had become too central to the Invictus brand. What began as a movement about veterans, critics argued, was increasingly becoming a movement associated with Harry and Meghan headlines. Every appearance generated celebrity coverage. Every event created media spectacles. Every speech became global news. While that attention brought visibility, some observers quietly wondered whether it was also creating unintended consequences. Because when a cause becomes heavily linked to one personality, that cause inevitably inherits that person's controversies. And Harry carries a lot of controversies. That is where things allegedly became dangerous. Because critics were no longer separating Harry from Invictus. They were merging them into one story. Every criticism aimed at Harry landed on Invictus. Every controversy connected to Invictus landed on Harry. The two became inseparable. That fusion created a storm neither side could easily escape. Then came perhaps the most uncomfortable question of all. What happens if calls for accountability become louder? What happens if sponsors start paying attention? What happens if supporters begin demanding structural changes? What happens if conversations about leadership start moving from online speculation into real-world meetings? Those possibilities suddenly transformed what looked like a public relations problem into something potentially much larger. And according to the most dramatic rumors circulating around royal watcher circles, some people allegedly began floating an idea that would have seemed unthinkable only a few years ago. Maybe Harry should take a step back, not permanently, not necessarily publicly, but enough to allow Invictus to move beyond the controversy, enough to separate the organization from the headlines, enough to stop the story from becoming bigger than the mission itself. Whether those whispers have any substance remains unclear, but the fact that such conversations are even being imagined tells you everything about how quickly the atmosphere has shifted. Because this isn't how the story was supposed to go. The expected narrative was simple. Harry leaves royal life, builds a new future, and continues growing the project that made him respected around the world. Instead, the narrative has become increasingly complicated. Every achievement now seems followed by another controversy. Every victory seems shadowed by another distraction. Every celebration appears interrupted by another scandal. And perhaps that is what makes this moment feel different. Not because one controversy alone can destroy Invictus. It can't. The veterans are bigger than the headlines. The mission is bigger than the gossip. The purpose is bigger than any individual. But that's exactly the point. Invictus was always supposed to be bigger than Harry. Now people are openly debating whether Harry has become bigger than Invictus itself. And that debate may be the most damaging development of all. Because once supporters start wondering whether a founder is helping or hurting the cause, the conversation changes forever. Suddenly, it's no longer about loyalty. It's about survival. It's about protecting the mission. It's about preserving the legacy. And if those questions continue growing, Harry could find himself facing a painful reality he never imagined when Invictus first began. The organization that once elevated him might become the very organization people believe needs distance from him. That possibility alone explains why this controversy feels so explosive. Because reputations can recover from criticism. Public figures can recover from scandals. Even royal feuds eventually fade. But when people start questioning your role in the one project that defines your legacy, the stakes become far more personal. And that is why the whispers surrounding Invictus are being watched so closely. Because this story is no longer just about allegations, criticism, or headlines. It is about whether Prince Harry can hold on to the one achievement that has defined his life after royalty.